I started as an artist. I was studying painting and sculpture at Pratt Institute in New York. And after I finished my finals, I had no hard set plans for the future. I just was finishing an art degree, and I have a real love for anthropology and archaeology. And I love studying other cultures, how they make objects in their art forms based on their belief systems, their geography, their culture. So, I'm just finishing up, and I was cleaning a silkscreen in one class and with the newspaper. And on the newspaper was the New York Times, and it said, Puri, playground of the Maharajas. And it caught my eye because there's this old rundown stone palace in this part of India, East India. And I don't know, I was watching, as I was cleaning, I was like, this looks interesting. So I read that, and it told about the Adavasis, the robust culture, the history. And I thought to myself, I have never seen India and never visited India. And when I was younger, there wasn't a lot of information about India in the States. And now there's a much bigger connection. But I thought, if I don't take this opportunity to see this vast country, I might never get there, because it seemed like such a big nut to crack, all the different cultures and peoples and things. So after college, I set off to India on a trip to see this palace in Puri. That was my goal. And it turned out to be quite a crazy trip. I was in New Delhi, I landed, and I went to the train station. They told me the trains are on strike and you have to take this bus. So I was like, okay, I'll take the bus. It turned out to be a smuggling bus to Kathmandu. So I ended up, they dropped me at a Buddhist monastery. This was quite an adventure. And I just hopped off and studied Buddhism for a couple of weeks at a monastery, which was quite interesting. And then, especially as just finishing my school, my head was just open with ideas. And then after I finished that, I went to Calcutta on my way to Orissa still as my goal. And in the streets of Calcutta, I met two children, and they were begging, and I was asking about their life and just curious about their life, and especially fresh from a Buddhist monastery, thinking a lot about things. And they took me to where they eat lunch, and it was an orphanage in Free School Street. And I thought, I would love to volunteer here. So the head nun, which was Mother Teresa, she said, are you a doctor? And I said, no. Are you a nurse? No. Psychologist? No. I'm an artist. And she said, so what can we do with you? How can you work with the children? She was very responsible that way. And so I ended up working in Kalighat ward in the southern part of Calcutta, in the dying and destitute ward, which was work I could handle. And she was comfortable with me there. So I learned a lot at that time, I think. And then I moved from there to Orissa, and I stayed there for about 8 months on the Bay of Bengal, and met a lot of locals. And so I went back on my way back to New York, went back to Delhi, then up to Dharamsala, and met Dalai Lama at his house. He was there. I went and sat and had a nice chat with him. And so my head was filled with Asia, with India. And I went home to New York, started a studio, and thought, now to start my art career and do what you're supposed to do. And in the garbage was a painting by a famous UK artist named David Hockney. So I thought, what a windfall. Like, this piece is worth a lot of money. So I sold it, and I went back to Orissa and opened a hospital. So I was young and just kind of, I thought, might as well do something with this money that's meaningful for my life, for others, and something that I can feel like, you're not putting a down payment on a car or an apartment. You're actually investing in a life. And so I did that, and the hospital grew, and it became kind of a, one room at a time. I would come back and work on artwork with different artists and people and go back. So that's kind of how I got into this whole venture. Was just kind of organically. I didn't kind of plan to be an NGO worker or something, or do something. It's basically a passion for doing something constructive and meaningful that has real impact. And I think over the years, I used the same skills that I learned as an artist, engaging materials to create something. You can use that. And if you use that with heart and kind of passion, you can really make some change in the world. my life is run on serendipity and kind of synchronicity and things kind of, if you're willing to listen to that and I think move in a direction that is in your strengths and also productive for your environment and others around you, you built a livelihood that's kind of a very positive thing for both your energy and what's in front of you. But so in Orissa, so I had this hospital running. I don't know if you remember, in 1999, at the end of 1999, there was a super cyclone hit Orissa. And quite a few people, there was so much devastation, quite a few people were killed. And I was in it. It was in Paradip in Jagatsinghpur, and it was right near my hospital. So already in that area, there was very kind of loose schools. They were kind of broken down, smaller schools. At that time, there was no roads, no electricity out there in this area. So it was quite remote. And we've developed it since then, but at that time, it was quite cut off. And so when the cyclone hit, all these kids that I've known since they were, babies, and I know the families in the huts they lived in, devastated. And it was so heartbreaking to see them crawl out of these mud pits covered in some thatch that used to be their home. And a lot of them lost family members, and the kids were wandering around quite aimlessly, with nothing to do, and just this post-traumatic stress that hit them from that cyclone. And so I decided to build a school because I thought, you build a hospital, you get basic health care. And one woman said something really fascinating when we were giving food out at the cyclone time, and Star TV came out and they wanted to do a positive story on what was happening in that region. So they came out and they interviewed locals, and I saw this on TV. And one woman said about the hospital I had built, they said, what are the benefits of this place? And they said, well, before this came and Michael came, our children would die of maybe a fever or with no food. Now, we don't have to have that fear of basic health care, and we can think of other things. And I thought that was tremendous opening for me to say, okay, you provided this basic health care, a security net. Now you need to give them opportunities. So I was building in my mind this structure, just answering what I was experiencing and what I felt would provide the best kind of growth for that region, because it was quite cut off. So built a school with 500 kids in there. It's amazing. 1 year we had 5 students top the state level exams. Very good education, and very proud of that school. And so then I started to move to other regions, up in the Himalayas, near Mount Kailash, with the Mayans in Mexico. Another place we'll talk about in Nepal. And so as I did that, I realized also the other component was women usually had, due to like vast histories and traditions, there's reasons for things that maybe developed in the wrong way, but the way women were kept down and kept without opportunities, it was for certain reasons, societally, maybe, or religiously, but now that modern times are here, it really needs to be revisited. And I think it's something that you really need to bring to the forefront. So the HEAD model I created, I realized that in all these regions I work, healthcare, education, and then economic development for women. Basically, you give women skills and work, and it's much more productive in terms of bringing up the family and the women, their position in society. It helps the gender parity be equalized. And I feel like that model, and my logo for the CITTA reflects this. It's like 3 balls: healthcare, education, economic development, and it looks like it's rising. So in every culture, like Chittamani, triple gem, like every culture has these 3 gems that are just kind of, so I kind of use that as the logo. So that's kind of how I developed the model, and it seems to work. And this is a strange analogy, but like in a highway, when you're driving and you have 5, 6 lanes in a super highway, you try to pick which lane to get into to move where you're going. It's kind of that same way now when I move into a region. Like recently I moved into Jaisalmer to create this school. I started with a school because that was more important, I think, I felt then hospital at that point. So it depends on the region, the needs, and really listening and responding to that, and then developing the other programs inside that as it grows and it's needed. Nepal, it did always have a place in my heart in terms of when I started studying Buddhism there, and I since love studying religions. I don't adhere strictly to anyone. I'm a bit naughty that way, but I love studying how people have translated religion into their lives in different cultures. For me, it's very meaningful, and that's a lot of the ways I work is to be very culturally sensitive when I go to a place and make sure that it meets the environment that the project is existing in. So in Nepal, I had projects up in Humla, which is in the far north west of the country, and in the mountains, and a women's cooperative working in Kathmandu. But when the earthquake hit in 2015, that really, like all of a sudden you get all these people coming from all over the world that weren't there before with money and things, and they're going around in helicopters doing emergency work. And my first initial reaction was provide food. So I went to all the villages where it was really struck, and I was just handing out food, and people were devastated and crying and taking the food, and it was the right thing at that time. But then I thought, you know what, 2-3 months down the line, all this emergency work clears up and everyone goes home and all the money's spent. So I thought I should do something more long lasting in terms of relief in that area, because you don't want to just, it happens, I've seen it too often, where people come in for disaster relief and then it dries up. And then everyone's kind of even 3 steps back from where they started. So we sussed out and assessed the region where the earthquake was. And what I found was there was a new road that went from Kathmandu. It was commissioned by the Japanese, and it went for the first time out past Dhulikhel, way out east into Sinduli. And it was a very good highway. And at the end of that highway was the Japanese offices for the road work. So we went to the local government and we said, hey, you give us all these empty office spaces, we'll convert it into a hospital, and then we'll have outreach to all the villages surrounding the end of that highway. So for the first time, we had access to all those remote regions, and we could refer them back to, if they needed to, back to Dhulikhel or Kathmandu for specialized treatments. So that worked out really well, and it's growing, and it's getting a lot of respect from the government there as well. They're helping out. So so far, so good. Mexico, it's a really healthy story. I was working with an artist to make money for the hospital in Orissa. I would work with various artists and stuff to make money. I didn't know what fundraising was or I didn't really have an organization at that point. It was me just doing this work. So Mexico was, I was working with David Byrne from the Talking Heads. He's a musician in the USA, and artist, musician. And he was doing some work with some of the Zapatista women that had come up from Mexico. They were doing a fundraiser for them with all these big bands, a concert too. So I was listening to all this, and I know that region because of my love for archaeology. I visited the Mayan ruins. I went deep in the jungle with machetes before, and just to see things, remote ruins. And they're doing this and building this, and so they're getting the money together. And the assistant of David Burns said to me, "Who's gonna do this? I mean, we got this money. We're just gonna hand it to these people. Who's gonna organize this?" They said, "Michael, you did this thing in India. Could you do it in Mexico?" And I said, "Sure. I know the people. I've lived there. I've been in the villages, and I can help you set this up." So I went down into it's probably the most remote clinic in Mexico because it's in the jungle in the south in Ocosingo. So really with a machete for 12, 15 hours on boats across lakes, you get to the villages, and I set up 13 satellite clinics in a central consultorio, which is like a hospital. And that's one of the reasons also I started to work with women, was all the women came to me and I said, what are your issues like here, is it healthcare issues? Do you have some problems that I'm not aware of? And it was the funniest thing. They said, you know what we need is a tortilla machine. And I'm like, why? They said, you don't realize the corn we have to harvest, the time we have to carry it, the grinding of it takes forever. Making them, they said, it takes up 85% of our life. And then with our other chores, we just can't function, So I said, how funny. I'm thinking some, basic healthcare, and what they really need is a tortilla machine to change all their lives. So it's things like that were really funny, and you learn on the ground level, and then you can respond. And I see the difference, like when you really respond to what's needed in an environment, and then fill it in with the other things that they may not realize that they need, certain healthcare, certain issues. You can really propel a region that's suffering from remoteness or marginalized nature and society. Like, you can really help them grow and become stable on their own. I think that's important that they learn. I had this kind of desire to do this. And it's funny you say this, because the first place I went, that Buddhist monastery in Nepal, when I found that Hockney painting in New York, I actually kind of followed my steps back to Orissa. And I went to the monastery and I spoke to the lamas. And there was this one lama who had Geshe Lama Konchog, and he had come out of the mountains, and he was sitting, 25 years in some mountain retreat cave. And he, like in Tibetan Buddhism, they had these bones with these like oracle, and they were rolling them. And I asked him, I said, I want to do this. I'm feeling I want to make this project, this in Orissa, something, and to give back. And his answer, the only thing he said to me was, make sure you have the capacity to do it. Like, know that you. So I really think that not scared me, but put an alarm in me that, like, don't just do these things. You have to make sure they're sustainable and that you can actually grow them and maintain them, because just a gesture like that without real infrastructure is kind of a little fruitless, because you're kind of tipping the scale, and then it goes back, and then you've left it even worse off maybe than before. So I think he put that kind of like fear in me that, this has to be sustainable, and you have to make sure you have the capacity to do it before you take it on. So I've never had an issue. All the programs grow, and they all kind of, the school and the hospital in Orissa has been like about 22 years now. And the project up in Limi is growing, and in Humla, and the Sindali Hospital. So I think I really work hard to overcome my thinking as an artist, because I have a vision of how it should be. I can work with the people there and have kind of a personable relationship to make also them rise to the occasion. And so I have all those skills, but if I look at an Excel spreadsheet, I just go cross-eyed. So I have to be careful that I have people around me, and I'm actually, making sure that there's transparency in the organization, that I understand what's happening, and we move at a pace that is, it's going to be stable and productive. Our latest project is in Jaisalmer, Rajasthan. It's called the Gyan Center. It's going to be a girls' school and a women's cooperative. We've got some great collaborations on board for this one. Like, there's a New York-based architect, amazing architect named Diana Kellogg, who's created pro bono. Like, she gifted us this amazing design in the desert that reflects the ancient culture, gives it a modern twist. It's got a lot of media because of its beautiful structure. It won the Best New Building in India award last year. And the girls' school uniforms are made out of local textiles called Ajrak by the incredible designer Sabyasachi Mukherjee. And there are just beautiful designs. The Gyan Center, the whole complex, but right now we build the Rajkumari Ratnavati Girls' School. That's one component. And then it'll have a central hall, which is a textile museum for the region. for the Sindh, and then performance space and library, and then a women's cooperative, which will actually try to preserve and then enhance a lot of the traditions there, the muke, susani, domani, different embroideries, weavings. So really what I did there is, all the other projects are working well. And as you said before, I had concerns about funding, because Orissa, Adivasi areas in Orissa, remote areas, not easy to raise money for, because people don't visit there, they're not familiar with it. Deep in the Himalayas, they know Mount Kailash, they know these things, but it's also, it's really difficult to get someone to connect with these people unless you have some kind of story or some kind of experience they can say, I understand that. So that's why sometimes it's easy to raise funds, say, for pre and postnatal healthcare, because women understand that and they feel that all over the world. So it's a common element. But these remote areas, it's very difficult. So in the Jaisalmer region, what I did is somebody keyed me into the fact that women in that area and girls' education suffer profusely. It's like really they have really strong traditions, which makes it an amazing area, like the root of the gypsies, the kind of Manganiyar and Langas music, the stone forts and the royal family. And it's really a charming place, but also very kind of set, like orthodox in terms of the Rajput clan and the Muslim communities. In that particular region, they're very kind of like, don't want to say old fashioned, that sounds like a negative term, but they're very traditional and they have very set ways, and they've dealt with things the same probably for centuries and the same way. But in that fold, like I mentioned before, women usually fall very short of opportunities, education. There's a high rate of female infanticide rate. There's a lot of issues that because of poverty, because of their remoteness, and they're kind of trying to deal with the traditions in ways that because of their economy, it's not the same as it used to be. So it's kind of a little disturbing. So my thought was, this was the most kind of glaring issue, was the need to empower women and educate girls. And then we'll fold the healthcare and other programs into that. So I was assessing the region, going back and forth, and the funny thing happened. There was a US designer named Donna Karen and a friend of hers, Christina Ong, who's in Malaysia. She's a businesswoman. And they wanted to start this cooperative called Shambhala. So they said, we want to start some product. Could you do something? I know you do this kind of thing. Can you do this? So I said, I can do Jaisalmer. I've been going out there a lot, and they need help, and the women could use the work, and I'll try it here. But it was really interesting for me, because I went to a Sindhi village, and I spoke to the elders in the village, and I had tea with them. We laughed, we had a good conversation, and I said, I have this work. The women can do it at their homes. They can stay here and not have to travel, and you can have some money in the family. And before you knew it, I was in a room with about 35, 36 Sindhi women, gossiping, laughing, doing embroidery on these yoga mat bags. And I thought, how amazing that when you just relate and you say what you're there for, and you don't have anything that they see as an obstacle, you just know how to kind of relate to them as a human and on their grounds. And I feel like this sent a little epiphany, a light bulb off my head, that they don't send the girls to school, and they won't. I would have to convince them. But if I created a cooperative where the aunties are able to see the children in school, and it's all girls, it's a collective kind of safe environment, almost like a fort. It's built like, it's to protect the girls. I think this would change their mind on a large scale and create a shift in that entire region. And I was in the NID. There's a friend of mine, Swasti, there that runs the NID in Ahmedabad, and she's also partnering with us. And she said, good on you guys for cracking that nut of Jaisalmer. It's a tough cookie, It's true. So I feel like I spent almost 9-10 years working with and learning the structure of that area and really pulling this together. And the other areas like are so remote for me. This was the first time I was in an area that was marginalized, which were women, but not as remote as the other places, like in the Himalayas or in Orissa or Mexico. So then I thought, this gives me a great opportunity. I'm near Jaisalmer. Tourists come there. Tourists come to the dunes. So we were donated land very near the dunes. And I thought this is a perfect site because if we created an excellent building that reflected the local culture and used local materials like stone, gave them something fresh and new, it would also draw tourists that could come to the marketplace, buy things from the women, support or sponsor the students, and create a self-sustaining, beautiful entity in that region that could actually flourish. So all the pieces are coming together. It took time, but I think all those details are important. It's almost like a massive game of chess where you start to think, wow, we have this we can use here, and we can do this here. And there is a really romantic, beautiful feeling in Jaisalmer. So we promote the musicians and through the relationship with the royal family and that history. And then in that way, we've been able to bring out a celebrity, both in India and US, to help promote it. So my hope is that this project will not only be self-sustainable and able to be duplicated in different parts of India or elsewhere, that you say you do this with the Tibetan people and it reflects their culture and has the same circuit. So the internal structure is there, but it would reflect South India or West Bengal, wherever it is. It'll become like a cultural hub. It'll promote the people there, give them work, bring their economy up, educate them, and give gender parity a chance.